Hey everybody, and welcome back to another tier list video. Today we're gonna take a look at the vehicle transports. There have been various suggestions. One was to do just helo and ground transports in one. And at first I wanted to do that, but then I thought I think it can give the wrong picture. Because even though a certain helicopter might let's say be an A tier, you would possibly still very much prefer to use a D tier transport. And that is somewhat the case with other tabs as well. Tank tab, just because, super heavy is in the A tier or low tier tank is in the A tier doesn't mean you necessarily want it to. But I think in this case it's easier to split that into different tabs, For example, Panther being A tier doesn't mean you want 4 cards of Panther transports in your infantry tab, right? And given that those are very different types of transports, I think it's also very easy to split them into different, tabs. Similarly to how artillery and anti-air is split, even though they fill the same tab. Helicopter transports and ground transports are in a similar vein, And I think that's really all there is to it. Another thing, last week, the fact that Eugene might do a DLC got quote-unquote leaked, if you want to. Not really a leak, but it appeared on the Steam database, and on Thursday, one day afterwards, they also briefly mentioned in a Steel Division 2 blog post that there will be news about Wargame soon, essentially confirming that, something's coming, presumably a DLC. What it is, nobody knows. We just have to wait and see. If there's any big information, I'll do a video. If it's just, some small stuff here and there that we might get hands off, I'll just mention it in other videos, post it in the comments, you'll see it on Reddit or on my Discord, But if there's gonna be something big, you can expect there to be a video. So if you don't hear anything, you can expect it's just something small or nothing at all in terms of information regarding that. And I think now we can actually get into it. I think regarding the ranking, the same things more or less apply. If not, then I suppose I'll mention it or something along those lines. So let's get into it. I think there will not really be any, or very, very few E tier transports. Because even just being wheeled for 10 points is already, acceptable. It is among the worst, the Amfibiebil, I don't know. Among the worst things you can get in terms of wheel transport. No, I think I wrote it right. Oh my god, what is his name? But yeah, obviously 0 armor means that AP will deal double damage, and any damage, any single point of AP that is above what would kill the transport deals damage to the infantry. Means a 1 armor transport gets killed by 10. This is all assuming full HP. 1 armor 10 HP transport gets killed by 10 AP or higher. If you get shot by 20 AP, the infantry takes 10 damage. Any 10 or lower HP squad dies, 15 HP squad survives with 5 HP. With 0 armor, AP being doubled, 10 AP will just wipe out any 10 HP or lower infantry squad inside. So yeah. 0 armor is not very good unless you can avoid it. Plus, of course, it doesn't even have a Browning or something like that. AMX 10P is actually really good. It is essentially a Marder 1 with 1 less front armor. I think there might be some slight speed difference, maybe side armor. But the autocannon is the same when it's important. It's a very good autocannon. Yeah. It's a very good transport. It's just that the infantry in it isn't quite on par with it, right? Subpar primary weapon and subpar AT means it's not, if you could get riflemen or Mostrelki or clones essentially, in those it would actually be a very significant boost. But the chasseurs being actually really, really bad, by far the worst line infantry in the game. Makes this still viable, certainly viable, but significantly weaker than one might think at first. MX-13, it's a 5-pointer that is fast, has 3 front armor and a Browning. Yeah, it's a very, very good 5-pointer. And these days, 5-pointer spam with regular rifle squads is just, yeah. For most transports, especially the M113s, I will not bother writing down all the names, but I think some people might not, but especially with these, you know, some people might not necessarily know that's the exact same unit. So for some, I'll essentially do stat clones. For others, I will not. You'll just see, I think. ASLAV-PC are very good wheel transport. 2 armor for 10 points is very good. You still get a Browning. You have very good off-road speed as well. Even your amphibious speed is actually really, really good. Among the highest amphibious speeds, I reckon. You know, for 10 points wheels, you can't really ask for much more. I don't think there's anything better. At least I can't think of anything better for 10 points that is wheeled. I think the only other 10 points wheeled that has 2 front armor is probably the Bison. I don't think there's anything else in that regard. And on top of 2 armor, it's also amphibious, which is rare. Good off-road speed, Browning, and the Bison has only a GPMG. There is the XA186NO, but that is not amphibious. It used to have 3 front and 3 side, but got nerfed. Yeah, but where do I rank this? I think still just quote-unquote only in the B tier. Simply because when it comes to wheel transports, you tend to not really spam them as much, right? Because they already cost 5 points more than the 5-pointer, and if you spam like by 4 or 3 stacks, like a lot of them, that really adds up. So then that being more survival, or having 2 instead of 1 front armor, while it's certainly still important, isn't nearly as important as it is for 5-pointers. But of course, it's still very good, and of course, it is very fast. Yeah. But, you know, if I had the choice between getting an ASLAV over the Amfibiebil, this fucking name, or an MX13 VTT over a basic 1 armor 5-pointer, I'd always choose getting the better 5-pointer instead of getting better wheel transport. Because it is just a lot more impactful. Bardelas, possibly the best 1 armor 5-pointer. Probably the best, I reckon. It is essentially a faster Zelda, but you get less armor, which is of course a big deal given that you have 1 instead of 2, being quite possibly the biggest or most important armor difference in the game. It is certainly not A or S tier. I'm wondering if it might actually still be B tier. I think it might still be B tier, no joke. It's gonna be a bit awkward because there's gonna be a Gavin M113 with Browning and 1 7.62, but no third weapon. Is this still gonna be B tier or C tier now? There's gonna be some weird cutoff, and it's, yeah, you gotta get to it when we get there. Zelda, of course, S tier. It is arguably for some people the worst of the S tiers, I would say, simply because it's the slowest of like the amazing 5-pointers, but it's also the strongest of the amazing 5-pointers. I think it might depend on what the rest of your deck looks like. If your tanks, your medium tanks, are very fast, with very fast, I mean like for like the K1s, for example, pretty fast, the M84A is really fast, then you generally want your 5-pointers to also be really fast. And that's when you notice when they're not fast. If your tanks are not that fast, then it's not as big of a deal that they are not, you know, that fast. Then, you know, they don't just run away in front of them when you push up. This used to be 10 points with 1 armor, and then some smartest thought it should get buffed to 2 armor again, and it got buffed to 2 armor and 15 points. Now it's useless again. At 10 points, it was actually a really nice, very strong actually transport for the VDV. Not anymore. And honestly, nobody really used it back, or like, not nobody, but it wasn't that popular back then. You know, I think these days people would still just use a 5-pointer and a Skrezhet, but it was actually a fun little alternative. Now it's just useless. Yeah, it's just not very good. BMD1P, you get the Conkers, which so the autocannon's actually useful. 20-point Conkers. I mean, the Conkers, for being a like a mid-ish tier ATGM, has very good range and accuracy, right? It lacks a bit AP, but it is, especially at high VATs, still for such a, you know, comparably low tier ATGM, very consistent. And of course, once again, the range, especially when compared to many blue 4 ATGMs that aren't a toe, quite above average, I'd say. With that, obviously mean the Milan, which is used by half of Blue 4. But it is still just a Grom. Grom de Paunch. It's honestly it is C tier though, because at the end of the day, it is actually kind of useful, in a way. And we don't have to just you have to keep in mind we're not rating these just based on in the context of them only coming in VDB, right? That we rate them irregardless of what infantry comes at them, or you could consider it the other way around. Imagine it with any infantry inside. What is the strongest combination, and rate it based on that. So if that came with 10-point infantry in a mech deck, for example, might not be the worst transport. BMD2, of course, though, gets the 2A42, which is a solid autocannon. It's just solid. It doesn't have the same range as the KB-A25. Other than that, it has, I think, with 5% lower accuracy, though, the same rate of fire and same AP. It's an okay autocannon. Here you get a late one. Genuinely, honestly, B tier. Because for the price you get an acceptable autocannon, acceptable ATGM, with 2 armor, you're fast, and for 20 points it's actually a decent deal. Compared it to the Marder 1. Is the Marder the cheaper one with the Milan 2? No, Milan 2 you only get for 25 points, huh? Yeah. I think for 25 points it is a good deal. BMD3, also B tier. It is significantly better, but it's also more expensive. But it still has only 2 front armor. And for 20 points it's already kinda iffy. But for 25 it's, even iffier. You get the medium optics though, which is nice. But you're starting to be a bit expensive at this point. The BMD2 is like a nice middle ground. And generally speaking, you also get a higher availability penalty, which maybe you should take into account, maybe you shouldn't, I don't know. BMP1, same deal with the BMD1. It's just, yeah. BMP1P, I guess same deal with the BMD1P. I mean, they are slightly better because, they have extra front armor, but they lose side armor, right? They're also slower, but for all intents and purposes, yeah. BMP1D is interesting. The main thing, or one of the reasons why it's not used, is because of BTR-T and BMP-T, which essentially do the same job but better. But the BMP1D is comparable to the KAFV25, which is now 15 points. It used to be 10. The South Korean grenade launcher, which I believe has a lower rate of fire, but also only 2 front armor and no Grom. The Grom is actually kind of useful in this, like, genuinely pretty useful in this scenario, because it massively helps to deal with enemy like autocannon transports and whatnot. And with 12 AP, you will double tap up to 4 armor. Against the infantry, of course, who cares about the Grom, right? The grenade launcher is gonna melt any squad that walks up to you and doesn't kill you instantly. But it might actually be A tier. But it's just hard to rate because nobody uses it, or virtually nobody uses it. Except for some masochists who for some reason play uses unmechanized. BMP1, for 10 points, suddenly really good. I'm struggling when it might actually be A tier. It sounds weird, because the 15.1 is gonna be like D tier or something, maybe, yeah, probably D tier. And 5, but it is like 1/3 lower price, right? 33%. And if you compare it, if you suddenly like pack in a 10-point infantry squad, that makes a huge difference. It might be that I'm slightly or like a bit underrating the one for 15 points and a bit overrating this one. So be it. This once again, I can just repeat myself. This is not meant to be like an objective tier list. This is of course still very much subjective, based on a, I would say, qualified opinion. But yeah, you guys seem to enjoy it, so I'll continue doing them. Even though some people might say they're useless, and maybe they are, but I think they can give, for not new players, but more advanced players, a better idea at what to look out for. Those who roughly know what they're doing, but still don't know all the units off the top of their head. So this is just a better BMP2 compared to the German one, but of course it's 20 points. for front armor with a good autocannon. It's like once again the late 2A42, whereas the East German one for the same price gets the early version. So it's a pretty good autocannon, but it is 20 points and just an autocannon, which is fine. It's fine. It's a very solid transport. That's really all there is to it. It's not groundbreaking. The Soviet BMP. Oh, I have to really, yeah. Let's do like fin and brackets so it's clear which BMP2. BMP2, the Soviet one, comparable to the BMD2, but for 5 points more, you get 2 front armor, which isn't bad, but you have to pay 5 points for just the 2 front armor. Which, given that you're mainly using it for the ACGM, I reckon, and I mean, I guess now you can use the autocannon more aggressively because you'll survive other IFVs more easily, or have a higher chance to survive and kill them before they kill you. But are the 5 points worth it in this scenario? It's a tough sell. It's a tough sell. It's a really tough sell. I'm not certain if it is. Those are essentially the same one, right? Yeah, I mean, you get 1 more side armor, but you lose amphibious capabilities and you're slower, so I'll probably use this one over that, but you know, for all intents and purposes, let's rate them the same. But I'm not sure if it's worth it, because the autocannon is acceptable, but like, you know, I don't think good enough to like warrant using this aggressively on the autocannon. You're using this mainly for the conquerors, in which case I think this is actually a tier worse. I don't think this is a good trade. The OBR-86 though is a different story because you get the better autocannon and you get a Conquer Sam. It's actually a very solid IFV. That the CSSR the Czechs get the same one under a different name, of course. That I like to use in on-town mech. I don't use it very often, but I had to use it recently, and it did a very good job for me. Especially, I think in 1 versus 1s, they are, I would say, stronger because most of the time you're not going up against, you know, 4 like super heavies or something like you might be in team games. So they tend to be harder to get rid of for the opponent. And once again, not necessarily in team games, but in 1 versus 1's probably a better deal than BMP3s most of the time. Even though, especially back in the day, people used to really like the BMP3 and always put it in their Soviet decks, which isn't to say that it's bad, but it is somewhere between A and B. Again, what else do we have in B tier? Right? You have the EMD3. Yeah, honestly, I think it's B tier. Because at the end of the day, I think it's still more of a tech card. You know, tech as in, you know, you put in to try to counter a certain type of thing or something. BP3, I think it is a side grade. It is a very different side grade. It's not like you trade 2 AP for 2 armor or something. It fills quite a different role. But it doesn't, like for 10 points more, right? You get medium optics, you get better armor, you get a arguably better ATGM. I think it depends on what you want to do with the ATGM. Do you want to snipe like lightly armored stuff on mud fight or something? Or do you want to try to take out medium tanks? And you have to, yeah, no. The HE autocannon, the HE gun is nice, but not very impactful. The autocannon, you know, is you have the 2A72, which I'm not sure is necessarily better. You have a low rate of fire, but of course more AP and high accuracy. I would say against vehicles it might be better, but not necessarily against infantry. And of course also mainly on the longer ranges. At close range, the BMP2 is going to do a better job. Yeah, I think it's more of a side grade. Both M86. I'm just gonna put these all under 15-point wheeled recon transports because they all cost 15 points to my knowledge, and they're more or less all the same. You know, they're fast, they're wheeled, except for like the UK one. They have good optics, they have medium stealth. They should be more or less the same, so I'll just put them under one thing. they're okay. That's yeah, I don't know. It's just they're okay. The stealth can be nice and helps the survivability. The optics means, of course, you have some. Actually, no. I think I underrate them. I think I genuinely underrate them. Okay, that's. There we go. I think I underrate them. If you consider them for 5 points, essentially, 5 points more, you get a free good optics recon you can put on a flank. I think it's very, very useful. And you can, of course, also sneak that around much better than like something like this because of the stealth. And if you manage to get into the enemy base, you can actually spot stuff. BTR-152. It is a 1 armor. I mean, I'm gonna consider them the same thing. Browning versus PKT, whatever. It's not miles better than the Amfibiebil, but I would certainly say they are better. BTR-50 is a very interesting one. It is a 5-pointer with a 50 cal, which is nice. 2 armor, which is nice. 2 front armor. But it is slow, low autonomy, which can sometimes come into effect because of how slow it is. Because once again, autonomy is not actually a range, but a timer. It means you can drive for 350 seconds. But only 1 side armor. If you're like fighting a forest or something, or like have this behind infantry in forest shooting at MGs, or their MGs, the side armor rarely matters. But when it matters is when you're like driving them up to get into a forest or something, or you're pushing with them over an open field. Then a single AMX-10 will just instantly pop them from the side, which not a huge deal, but you know, is annoying and instantly unloads your infantry and has them panicked and also damaged. Coupled with the low speed means they tend to be vulnerable for a longer time, and you prefer 2 over 1 armor because they're much tankier, but on the side they're not that tanky anymore. And that's why they're, in my eyes, a significantly worse 5-pointer than MX-13s, what have you. It's the same thing. CST, it's basic 5-pointer with a worse 50 cal, right? The Dishka has only 10% accuracy. Other 50 cals, Browning, NSVT, NSV have 15. But yeah, once again, I'm considering them the same thing. You know what? Let's speed this a bit up. Let's say 1 armor plus MG yields 10 points. 3 MG yields transports. There we go. It's just, we don't need this to be cluttered with like basic transports, right? Basic 5-pointers with 1 armor and 1 MG. Generally, I would say still C tier. 5-pointers are just good. And yeah, the one with 2 MGs, the ANSEG one, it's also gonna be in C tier. And the one with 3 MGs, the Bardelas, is the only one in B tier. BTR-60P we have that in C tier. PB, I'm gonna rate these ones individually because there's not too many and there's some slight differences that can actually make a big deal. Honestly, the BTR-60 PB probably pretty bad because it is a KBVT, and I tell people to not underestimate KBVTs. But it's the low-end KPVT and you don't even get 2 armor. And in many scenarios, that's not worth 5 points. The BTR-70 and most notably BTR-AD, there are situations where it's definitely worth 5 points. But the BTR-60PB, you don't even get extra front armor. So I can't in good conscience say that they're C tier. I would nearly always prefer the wheeled transports with 10 points instead. for 10 points. BTR-70 is okay. It is 70. It is 70. It's 2 front armor. Still a little early KBVT, but at least you get the 2 front armor. So in forest you can survive a burst or 2 of certain autocannons and actually fire back. And if you have 2 or something of them, then you can actually manage to kill them potentially. Or if you sneak up and they have to turn around first, you know, then you can actually kill them. BTR-60 PB, much lower chance with only 1 front armor. XA180, we have KT. Hopefully I don't need to tell you why. This has become actually my most hated unit in the game, and I might even call this strongest unit out of all the DLC units by now. Maybe I'm late to the party here, but yeah, I think this is actually the worst offender out of all the DLC units. I didn't really have. Let me put it this way: like up until like recently, there wasn't like a single unit where I was like, "This is the worst out of the DLC units." Maybe it was Maglands, but this is starting to annoy me the most, or I find the most ridiculous by now these days. BTR-AD is actually good in certain situations. It is good when you get it with high vet infantry, because then at 20% base accuracy, right? If you compare it to the early KBVT, actually makes this KBVT quite consistent, especially at close ranges, quite deadly. You can, if you meet an AMX 10 in the forest, it'll shoot at you, not kill you, and you just kill it then with the KBVT. That BTR-AD actually good. I wouldn't always take it over 10-point retransport, but you know, certainly with high vet infantry, and most notably with infantry that I don't spam. Where the 5 points, you know, if you pay 6 or 7 times, 5 points more per match, whatever. BTR-ADA, I mean, just a very, very, very solid autocannon transport. I mean, it has medium optics, it is fast, it's amphibious, good autocannon. It is strong, not imbalanced or unbalanced, strong. It is certainly one of the better ones. BTR-90, 10 points worth paying for. I think these days the only wheeled transport, or maybe even the only wheeled, not the only wheeled vehicle, but definitely the only wheeled transport, I think, with 3 front armor. AGS-17 that can fire at the same time, still medium optics, even faster, off-road and amphibious. That thing's crazy good. Amazing fire support if you're assaulting towns, especially on low intensity flanks where you might go up against like 1 or 2 infantry squads. Plus Pets and Screw, you walk up to a town, this Pets and Screw will spot while you stay out of the AT range, and the BTR-90 will kill them. Such a strong combination, so versatile. Expensive, but worth it. You just have to be careful with using it. You don't want to throw this around. Like BTR-80, you know, yeah, okay, but BTR-90, for 30 points, you don't want to just, you know, throw this around willy-nilly. BTR-D, not quite as good as the other 5-pointers. It is a very high rate of fire PKT. Let me actually open, once again, I didn't prepare this. Armory tool, let me open this up. This is a very, very high rate of fire PKT. I mean, it's quad PKT, but essentially it's 1 MG with very high rate of fire. Also, where is this supposed to shoot out? This is like a, oh, I think I see where it is. Okay, let me just, it's like out of here. Is that where they're supposed to shoot out from? I guess there's 2 of these little MGs. I don't know where the other 2 are. Anyway, that's not part of this thing. So to give you some numbers, BTR-D has over a minute a rate of fire of 150, compared it to, I don't know, let's look at the normal PKT, right? 65. But it should be mentioned that within the actual salvo, the quad PKT does have 4 times the rate of fire. It has a short reload of 0.2 instead of 0.8, a salvo length of 40 instead of 10, you know. But it also has a lower base accuracy of only 10% versus 15. But especially in forests, it's not a huge deal. But yeah, it's very, very solid. BTR-D Robot, for 10 points, you get the Forgot M. I mean, it's It is one of the few 15-point or cheaper transports that get a ATGM that is actually like not slow as fuck. Or like near useless. I guess the other contender would be the Fuchs Milan. Not actually the worst unit to take, especially like for cheap ATGM squads or manpads, where you get a few of them around and they can be nice on flanks or something. So certainly not horrible. Skrezhet. A or S? A or S? S or A? I might actually still put this in S tier. This is just so incredibly versatile. They are good for fire support, both infantry and vehicles, because it will just stun vehicles. They're solid. They're very good at frontline AA as well. Plane flies over it, takes 1 damage, book finishes it off, bam, right? There's especially, yeah, like I said, especially if you use these books, BUKS, not BOOKS. They are so crucial for just dealing that 1 chip damage to planes, so the book can finish it off without a crit. So useful. It will stun helicopters if they fly over it. Good base defense, and it is just so damn strong. Still 2 front armor, still the quad PKT as well, so it has like very high burst damage and then has to reload for quite a while, but it is amazing, actually amazing. Same with the BTR-T. I think hopefully I don't need to elaborate on that, but like 13 armor for in the like a grenade launcher is even as medium optics. Okay, Buffalo might actually be the one of the few, if not the only E tier, and I guess the Dutch copy. In and of itself, like 1 armor and of course 3 MGs, very, even 2 Brownings, right? The Bardelas has 1 Browning and 2 7.62s. This one has 2 Brownings and 1 7.62. But it is incredibly slow and has horrible autonomy. That is things that aren't good. For an M36 or something, that's one thing, because it has to shoot it, like can't shoot it like nearly 2,000 meters anyway. This thing has to drive infantry around, get close to the front line, move through forests and whatnot. Horrible autonomy and horrible off-road speed just don't work together in that case. Just, it is, yeah, if it completely kills nearly every unit. It can work if it was like accessible for them, for like man pets or something, if you just, you know, they don't always need to drive very far. But like, no. Stormer, not quite S tier. It has only 1 side armor, and it has only a 7.62, but it has 3 front armor. And while it doesn't have like the DPS, which is quite important of other 5-pointers, 3 front armor is really nice. And it is still very fast, like 80 km/h, it is very fast for track transports, especially at 5 points. BPM ADA, S tier, easy. It has the late RH202 clone. RH202 because, you know, that's a gun used by the Marder 1 and a stat clone. But the Marder 1 for 15 points, which is already very good because it has 4 front armor, has 20% accuracy and 10% stabilizer. This one is 30. That's like 50 percentage points more. 10 percentage points more, or 50% more is what I meant to say, right? That is crazy. And given that on the highest rate of fire autocannon in the game, that is a ridiculous DPS boost. Couple that with the fact that the seemingly useless and garbage Malyutka can fire at the same time. Once again, I cannot repeat this enough. Do not underestimate the Malyutka on a vehicle that can fire its ridiculous autocannon at the same time. At close range against enemy IFVs, or like not necessarily point blank, but like let's say 1,000 meter range, where it might take a couple of seconds for each other to kill. That Malyutka is another chance to do like 7-8 damage to the enemy IFV. And then the autocannon, has dealt the other 3, that, and not rare. It's not often. It doesn't happen very often. But every now and then the enemy might like try to retreat from your PvP, like their AA or something like that. And the Malyutka, every now and then it will just hit and kill that AA piece that would have otherwise survived if you didn't have the Malyutka. So do not underestimate that Malyutka. The ADAs, the other Vidras, are actually not that crazy. They still can fire the ATGM at the same time, which still is honestly kind of bullshit. But their autocannons aren't ridiculous anymore, right? This is like okay autocannon. This is a okay autocannon, right? They're fine. They're not crazy. Yeah. All three of them have ammo issues with their autocannons though, and while the 3 armor on the 15-point PvP is very good, on 20 and especially at 25.1, it is not very good anymore, especially given the fact that their ATGMs aren't the same range as Conkers, so they tend to be quite a bit closer to the enemy as well, with lower base accuracy, which of course you have 26 AP, but still fairly low base accuracy. These Malyutkas as well are significantly faster than the garbage Malyutka, so you can certainly use them mainly for the Malyutkas. But they aren't that great anymore, and the autocannons, they run out of ammo very quickly. I think this is autocannon, the M113A, I recently looked at it, is the one that runs out the fastest of autocannon of all the 3 BVPs. But I mean, actually hard for me to judge, because everyone just spams these for a good reason. I tried these out a couple of times, but I honestly wasn't quite impressed. I might underrate them, but the thing is, the expensive ones, you tend to be a lot more careful. You can't spam them as much, and if they're more on their own, as opposed to like in a stack of 4, that 3 armor and the 1 side armor isn't quite enough anymore. And so, as such, yeah. But 26 AP for 25 points is kind of ridiculous. With low base accuracy and low range makes it kind of not that crazy good anymore. Even in the mech deck, I was actually kind of unimpressed. BVP1 it's just a BMP1. So is the yeah, I mean those are the same as as the, I believe at least. I hope I don't get debated by the nomenclature here. And then of course we have the BVP VZ86. Oh no, I actually got debated. I thought I put them all up here. Okay. You hate me, huh? I mean, let's just, I said I'd do it with 5 pointers and such, but, I guess we'll just write these down here as well, even though of the same name, or like are essentially the same unit. Oh yeah, 5-point cheaps. Let me put it this way. They're D tier. I'm this because there's a single one that doesn't have 50k mage. Why? There are 50 points and you're like, okay, 55 points and 150k mage road speed is in a way amazing, until you keep in mind that they have a garbage off-road speed and take a big speed penalty. So as soon as they are not on the road anymore, they're slow AF. Coupled with the fact 5 HP, 0 armor. Yeah. Absolutely horrible. CV9030N. It has the, in my opinion, best autocannon in the game, together with the KT. Because it is, in my eyes, the best trade-off between like rate of fire and accuracy and firepower, or like AP power. Still amazing against vehicle and still very good against infantry. Just a perfect. But still like sniping at long range as well as in infantry and even at close range. Quite tanky, medium optics, fast. Doesn't have amazing amount of ammo. Oh my god, I'm sorry. I should start muting my phone when I record. It doesn't have amazing ammo. It will run out every now and then if you keep it alive. But I guess it's in and of itself a kind of a good thing, means you got a lot of value out of it. I might actually put this in S tier. Maybe it's just because I have a sweet spot for this, but I just love this thing. It's so good. Spartan, it's just gonna be a tier lower. Actually, it might be 2 tiers lower because you pay 10 points and it's still tracked. It's still tracked, and it's just. No, I shouldn't, because if this one is 8, let's put it in B tier. It still has like 3 front ammo, which is actually kind of nice. but like 15 points, and it's still tracked. You know, it costs the same as it should definitely be 10 points, right? But it costs the same as the ones that are just wheeled. I mean, sure, you have more front armor, but who cares? Basic 5-pointers. One of the worst ones because it has not so great off-road speed, but it, you know, with one armor, whatever. The warrior line. 3 front and side armor is kind of nice, but you have one of the worst autocannons. Despite of what it actually says, it has actually a higher rate of fire than the Bushmaster, but of course it has no stabilizer, which is annoying. Really annoying, actually, because a nice thing with IFVs to do is to just run down stuff that tries to escape, but you can't really with this. Honestly, I don't know. I think I can kind of good conscience say that it's D tier. It's not really that horrible, like, right? At the end of the day, like 3 front and side armor and like a autocannon that isn't like absolute dog shit. And it is bad, but not absolute dog shit. It's still like useful to have. Warrior 90 is the same, but you get 6 armor now. Honestly, just in the same tier. Like, yes, it's a nice upgrade, and yes, you're quite tanky, especially for 20 points. But the autocannon is still very bad. And the Warrior Milan, same. Like, you can actually like tank a tank shot. You can actually tank a tank shot, and like just eat it and fire the Milan. But it's a Milan too, so it might just not hit. Yeah, Grizzly, Bison. Bison has 2 armor, so I guess honestly B tier. Yeah, Hachi-Kyu Shiki. Love and hate relationship with this thing. For 25 points, for the same price as the CV90, right? You get a significantly worse autocannon. Like, it is significantly worse. You have less AP, lower the fire, lower accuracy. You get 1 step more range, but it's not worth it. That is not worth it. It allows you to fire at long ranges, but it is still, especially close ranges, I always lose against like BTR-90s, BTR-ADAs, XA185 KTs even, right? You lose these fights so often, and you shouldn't, because for 25 points you also pay like for 4 front armor and like what is supposed to be rather high-end autocannon. But in practice, it's just, it is a good autocannon, but not for 25 points. This thing loses very often, and medium optics are nice, but it is by no means a bad unit, right? But I feel like it is actually worse than it looks. And then maybe at first thing you might say, oh, it is bad because for 25 points you also get a garbage ATGM. The ATGM is actually kind of really nice to have. It's the autocannon that bugs me, or maybe the armor, or the combination of those, or just not quite enough. I'd gladly whenever, if I could, I would always use the CV90 as useful as the Jumat can be, especially if you spam this in a mech deck or something. The CV90 is just so much more consistent. Hammer, Humvee, HMV. This is a tough one because they have no. Nah. Humvee. I'm just gonna do some all 3. It's just. KAFV25. I mentioned the autocannon. Same rate of fire as the BMP2, right? At least, yeah, same rate of fire, but very similar stats to the late version of the 2A42. But you get it for 15 points. It is a very good autocannon transports, especially for 15 points. 2 armor, front and side, 70k mage off-road speed, amphibious. Good, very good. I don't know, not much to complain here. FV4333 used to be seen fairly frequently when it was 10 points. Nowadays, it's just as nice as grenade launchers are. They tend to be really good as a bonus. I mean, unless you get like on the BTR-T or something. As your only real weapon, you generally don't necessarily want it. I mean, it's not bad, right? But like, especially if you have the option, like go for the KAFV. The KAFV is of course significantly weaker versus infantry, but it's just so much versatile because it actually deals with like enemy 5-pointers or like vehicles. KAFV doesn't really. Of course, it can crit them to death and stun them and panic them, but it's just, you know, more specialized and less versatile. K200 S tier, 2 front, 2 side, amphibious, fast, and gets 2 MGs. The M60, I believe, can only fire forward, or at least it can't fire while moving, as you can see. K100, we had this, Korshun, it's just a BMP1. Kyu-Roku Wapc. It's okay. It's similarly to the BTR-90. You like might want to, if you want to capture a low intensity town or something on the flank where you expect there might be one, maybe 2 infantry squads, you move up, unload the infantry, draw enemy fire or spot them if you have recon, or like if it's recon infantry, and fire with that thing at range. That's where it's really good at, or the most useful at. Yeah, it is good, it is solid, but once again, just specialized, meaning that if you go up against anything with an AP gun, you're probably gonna die. And you know, unless you get a lucky crit. LVT4, it's the same as a Buffalo. 777A1 used to be 10 points, I believe. Also used to have only 1 armor though. At 10 points used to be like a very frequently seen combination. When small were also 15 points. Quite a ridiculous package. It's, I mean, I guess more or less the same as the KAFV, but the KAFV once again I believe has a lower rate of fire. Let's actually take a look. Yeah, quite. Hold up, is the rate of fire actually that low, or is it just the armory lying to you? Like, I believe it also, it doesn't even have higher suppression. Wow, why is it so much lower? Is it really lower? It is, wow. Huh. It is significantly lower. So the KAFV over a whole minute, which is not always the best indicator, fires 29 rounds per minute. The LVTP-7A1 41. So KAFV fires 10 shots to LVTP 11 before having to reload. But the long reload, you know, the salvo reload, is 10 seconds for the KAFV, and the LVTP-7 has 8 seconds. So not only does the LVTP fire more rounds per salvo, it also reloads the salvo faster. But also within the salvo, the LVTP-7 has a shot reload of 0.8 seconds, a KAFV of 1.2. So for every 2 shots the KAFV fires, the LVTP fires 3. And that's massive. Holy moly. I don't know why, like, it's not even, like, usually when, no, other cannons or things have, like, different rate of fire for the same price, like, especially when it comes to autocannons, right, for the same price, you know, then there's, like, a difference in rate of, and the one has higher and the other lower rate of fire, and there's usually, like, an accuracy difference or an AP difference, no, which in this case would be HE, but not even a suppression difference. I don't even know where that came from. Like, usually these things are, like, very much standardized when it comes to Eugen. So honestly, that is as amazing as, no, honestly, I'm sorry, KAFV, but man, I mean, I knew it was slower. I always thought, because I mean, the armory says so. But like, jeez. Not quite S tier. There's gotta be the cutoff somewhere. Here it's just having quote unquote only 1 MG and quote unquote only 2 front and 2 side. It's also not amphibious. It's also quote unquote only 60 kmh. Not even that much faster than the Zelda. So yeah, only A tier. I mean, M113A3. It's also faster and has 3 front and side. So yeah. I mean, this is an objectively better 5-pointer, right? Better than this thing. So I guess we have to put this up here. The thing is, it's just only available to the. Might this be actually? I don't think it's quite 8 here, because it still just dies instantly and fires like in gun range. So even if you spam this, I think it wouldn't really be. Like, let's say you spammed it, you had Razzmann with that, right? So you spam these. I don't think it would be that effective because of how low the range is. And I'm very much someone who likes to say that, oh, don't underestimate these low tier ATGMs. But I think in this case, they might actually be like close to useless, because as far as I know, they can't fire both weapons at the same time, and not like that matters because one is an MG and not another cannon. But like, you still just die instantly, right? It's certainly not a bad unit, but I don't think it would suddenly be A or S tier. But you know, maybe I'm wrong. Wouldn't be the first time I completely underestimate a unit. M84A, in case you didn't know, like when Yugoslavia was out, I was like, M84A, it's an M1 Wilk, but for 10 points you get 1 AP, that's garbage. Yeah, look at where we are now. The Super Dragon, now it's 10 points, but you get the A3 version and the significantly better Dragon. But I mean, compare this to BTR-D Robot, which for 15 points has a Fagot M, which has more range, but also more AP actually. Yeah, I thought it was actually a side grade, but no, it's not. Oh, this is also the Tracks recon. Oh, I forgot. Anyway, Super Dragon, I'm for 10 points. I think this one might actually be better than the other Dragon if you had it available for Rifleman. The ACAV, you go into the same thing as Spartan. Oh, you also exist, man. Oh, next. Oh, the minigun. Such an infamous unit. Spam the minigun, spam the minigun. Hehe, it's such a fun unit. It's fucking garbage. It's garbage. That thing has a lower rate of fire than a Browning. Like with it, okay. It shoots 10 rounds and then has to reload for 6 seconds. A Browning shoots 10 rounds and then has to reload for 2 seconds. The shot reload, like the reload in between those 10 rounds, for the minigun is 0.6 and 0.8 for the Browning. So yes, it is a good bit higher, but not like, you know, A10 Avenger tier higher, right? You of course also have 1 HE versus the Browning with 0.75. You also have 20% accuracy versus the Browning with, okay, you know what? Let's hope I don't forget this. Versus the Browning with, did I say accuracy? Was I talking about accuracy? Yeah, 15 versus 20. Same range. More range versus helicopters. Suppression is lower, but you have a higher rate of fire, of course. But I think the actual suppression damage output is still higher on the Browning. What I'm trying to tell is, yes, the minigun might deal a bit more damage, but even if it does, it's not very significant. The burst damage is certainly a good bit higher, but only the raw damage, not necessarily the suppression damage. And that is sometimes more important, especially if you spam them, because that means you more or less instantly stun vehicles. And you have to pay 5 points for a rather marginal DPS up. And what is actually the most important thing, compared to the miniguns used by the ACAV, like the 50 cal miniguns, this doesn't have the AoE tag. You know, same with the minigun used on the Bell, etc., which is presumably the same minigun actually. I never checked. They don't have the AoE tag, meaning they can't fire at anything that has more than 1 armor. Right? That's what's so good about the ACAV, because even against like 2 or 3 armor vehicles, it will deal a good amount of damage and most notably stun and panic them. This minigun won't. And you have still only 1 armor. So actually, despite of what I thought, I think we might have another E tier contender. Where is it? Welcome, M113A1 Minigun. If it was the A3 version, no. Maybe, certainly not E tier. If it was 5 points, also certainly not E tier. For 10 points, a transport that is at best marginally better than, like, you know, a basic M113. No thanks. Bradley line. I mean, the basic Bradley is really not good. The other Bradleys are quite good. This one, if the toe had 16 AP, okay, because then you can at least one-shot 2 armor, which he says is not even that frequent anymore, but At least you would have that, but 15 armor and one of the worst autocannons you can get. Not the worst, not by any means the worst. There are certainly worse ones, and we'll get to those. But certainly not a very good one. Certainly not D tier, but like M2A1. Sometimes I prefer this one because I prefer sometimes only really use them against like enemy IFVs, and that means I don't really need like the extra massive AP for 10 points. You get with this one the late Bushmaster, so you have better AP and accuracy. So especially against vehicles or IFVs, you're gonna be a good bit better. Though generally speaking, you still mainly want to use the tow. I think they're both just B tier. Especially like if what I like to do is use them with the stinger. So I have some stingers here and there, and if I need, basically what I do is I buy most of the time buy the Bradley for the Bradley itself, and the stinger is just a nice bonus, right? For like 40 points, if you use the A stinger, you get like a 50 points, excuse me. You get a Tow 2, medium optics, 5 armor, plus acceptable autocannon vehicle. I mean, it's only 4 tows, but you're gonna play with the FOB anyway in USA, so it's not a big deal. So that's really nice. Another nice thing about the Bradleys in general, they fire 2 missiles before having to reload for 10 seconds. That is very, very good. For one, because at max range, a K1 will definitely not one-shot you, but you will double tap a K1, right? And you're gonna get 2 missiles out before the enemy is before the K1 is gonna get 2 shots out. So at max range, you need 23 AP to one-shot this, so that burst is really good. Also, of course, if you go up against like an AMX 10 and you miss the first missile, then yeah, you have a second chance. So that's very, very good to have. And this is going to conclude the first part of vehicles. Hope you learned something, hope you enjoyed it. And that's really all there is to it, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I can't talk. Hopefully see you next time. Later.